Tonight on Movie Cat, we're watching the action comedy Megaforce. Megaforce was released in the summer of 1982, was written by James Whittaker, Albert Ruddy, Andre Morgan, and was directed by Hal Needham. It starred Barry Bostwick, Michael Beck, Persis Khambatta, Edward Mulhare, and Henry Silva. I'm watching the plain old DVD release from 2010, which is 99 minutes. They couldn't have just stretched it out one more minute? There was a lot of macho strangeness in the 1980s, but Megaforce may be the most bonkers American film of the Reagan era. For general moviegoers, I'm giving Megaforce an F. And for its intended audience of young men ages 13 to 25, I have to add some points and give it a D+. But it's not all bad. Megaforce is the kind of movie that is so bad it's good. It's mega. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. The point of Megaforce is Megaforce. Megaforce was the pet project of famous Hollywood stuntman Hal Needham. Needham's resume of stunt and double work goes back to the late 50s, but his big break came when he wrote and directed and did stunts for the hit Smokey and the Bandit in 1977. Needham followed this up with a collection of stunt-filled films like Hooper and Cannonball Run, but then came Megaforce. Megaforce was supposed to be a part comedic action flick and part stunt showcase with no expense spared. But what was made was, well, Megaforce. In the end, Megaforce exists purely for the explosions and stunt action, which, even by the standards of the early 1980s, aren't that great. And even by the standards of Needham's other films, aren't that great. Even though Megaforce is what it is, there are still some interesting ideas floating around in the film, and only really make sense in the context of the Cold War and Reagan's America. Oh, and also disco. The movie barely has a coherent plot, but who cares? The background is that there are two fictional countries, Namibia and Sardoon. The two countries are on the verge of war and tensions are mounting. The movie doesn't tell us where these fictional countries are, but they are apparently in Central America. They could be further south, but the whole movie takes place in desert and mountain terrain, so Central America makes a bit more sense, or maybe no sense? In point of fact, the movie was actually shot in the desert outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. Namibia has hired a mercenary army to harass the citizens of Sardoon along the Namibia-Sardoon border. The mercenaries, led by antagonist Guerrera, played by Henry Silva, begin the movie by delivering a communist propaganda speech to a collection of Sardoon factory workers, then blowing up their factory, thus freeing them from the capitalist oppressors. Lots of explosions. Interestingly, in an attempt to build audience sympathy for Guerrera, we later learn that he is no communist or idealist, but rather an opportunistic mercenary, a capitalist in his own right. As Guerrera attempts to get back across the border, he is attacked by the Sardoon army, led by General Burnwhite, an English military advisor, and Major Zara Bindu van Vuda, the daughter of the president of Sardoon, and a soldier herself. Zara is played by Indian beauty queen turned actor Persis Khambatta, most notably of Star Trek the Motion Picture. General Burnwhite, played by TV star Edward Mulhare, attempts to pursue Guerrera across the border, but his orders are rescinded by Major Zara so as not to touch off a full-scale war with Namibia. This issue of the sensitivity of this border will come up again and really is the fulcrum of the plot. Frustrated that they cannot legally fight off Guerrera, General Burnwhite and Major Zara seek out Megaforce to help them. Megaforce, we learn, is an international secret army that is funded and manned by all freedom-loving countries as a tool to secretly destroy the forces of evil wherever they may be. A way for the international community to circumvent the bureaucratic red tape and legalities involved in intranational disputes. Kinda like the premise of G.I. Joe? Sorta? Megaforce brags an international lineup. The soldiers are from all over, like Japan, Mexico, Russia, and bizarrely, the Confederacy? But who are we kidding? It's America. Megaforce is a strange mega fantasy of American mega superiority. They travel to what is presumably the United States, although it is not said, but they arrive on Continental Airlines. Remember Continental? And then they are chauffeured out into the desert, where they encounter a good old boy named Dallas, played by Michael Beck, doing the worst Southern accent ever invented. Beck is best known for his role as gang leader Swan in The Warriors, as well as Dreamboat Sonny in the roller disco masterpiece Xanadu. Interestingly, Xanadu is a more closely related movie to Megaforce, but I digress. Dallas escorts Burnwhite and Zara to a training area where a squad of Megaforce's motorcycle elite are using multicolored balls for target practice, and wow is it exciting, and weird, After the macho and disco display, we are introduced to Megaforce's leader, the perfectly named Ace Hunter. Hunter is played by Barry Bostwick of the famed Rocky Horror Picture Show. They all head to Megaforce's secret underground base where we learn the majority of what Megaforce is all about. There are several scenes of Hunter and Zara flirting, but the movie gets back on track as Hunter explains his plan to defeat Guerrera. Called Hook, Line, and Sinker, it involves only 60 of Megaforce's men, which doesn't seem all that mega, luring Guerrera's army out into the open and across the border, so General Burnwhite's army can destroy him. It also involves Megaforce performing part of the operation inside Camibia, which is apparently illegal. Megaforce heads out in 3 C-130 cargo planes with a platoon of dune buggies and motorcycles loaded inside. After a long flight, they parachute in Camibia and attack Guerrera's supply stores, then zip away to hide in the mountains, waiting for Guerrera's army to pursue them so they can lure them across the Sardoon border. This is where the big plot twist happens. This is also the most confusing part of the movie. Instead of pursuing Megaforce, Guerrera apparently notifies the Camibian and Sardoon governments of Megaforce's illegal actions, although this is not made clear in the movie. General Burnwhite and Zara are in a position to ambush Guerrera just over the border in Sardoon when they receive a message from their leaders. They then fly to Megaforce's base to inform Hunter. Out of the blue, Guerrera arrives at Megaforce's resupply base in a medevac helicopter, no army in sight. Strangely, Hunter and Guerrera greet each other like best friends, in a play that there is more honor among soldiers than bureaucrats. General Burnwhite and Zara arrive at the Megaforce base and tells Hunter that the other fellows, meaning Guerrera's country Camibia, regard the Megaforce mission as an act of war, and that if they cross the border into Sardoon, that will cause a full-scale war, and that the ambush won't happen. This means they have been betrayed by their own side and are trapped in Guerrera's country. Guerrera tells Hunter that the whole Camibian army is on the way to destroy Megaforce. Guerrera also tells Hunter that there is only one place where the Megaforce planes can land for an evacuation, and that is a dry lake bed nearby, and that Guerrera's tanks are already there. Guerrera then flies off in his medevac helicopter. Of course, this whole scenario is ludicrous and makes zero sense, but again, who cares? Because Megaforce. So Megaforce must invent and execute a daring escape. After a stunt-filled battle at the dry lake bed, the C-130s do in fact land long enough amongst a barrage of explosions to load up the Megaforce men and fly to safety, leaving all their equipment behind. One of the more bizarre aspects of Megaforce is that the heroes fail in the end. They don't save anyone from the communists. They don't bring peace to Sardoon. Guerrera and his army are still intact and in control at the end of the film. And Megaforce is compelled to tuck tail and run for their lives. But the movie seems to think that Ace Hunter and Megaforce have succeeded. It's so weird. In the end, Megaforce is not a deep movie with any hidden meanings. It's exactly what it is. However, Megaforce is a product of its time, and in fact, it's actually a couple of years late to the party. So let's talk a little bit about what was going on in the world to elicit something so mega. When people talk about Megaforce, they usually think of it in terms of our modern culture. But in 1981 and 1982, there were a lot of things going on that just don't exist today. Firstly, this is a Cold War film. The US had exited Vietnam, but anti-communist ideals were still the norm. Ronald Reagan was president, and in a lot of ways he was the face of anti-Soviet sentiment. A war in Nicaragua was raging during this period and might account for the film's references to Latin America. Interestingly, in respect to Megaforce, it was a war between the communist Sandinista regime and the American-backed Contras that were hiding out just over the border in Honduras. Sound familiar? Megaforce, however, is not trying to comment on proxy wars of the age. It is happy to simply indulge in the rapid-fire capitalism of the 1980s. Indeed, everything about Megaforce is over the top. This is where I think the filmmakers were trying to root the comedic aspects of the film, even if they failed to make the jokes actually funny. They attempted to dial everything up to 11, but the film is definitely not a satire or a comment on the indulgences of the 80s. No, Megaforce really is Megaforce. Another aspect of Megaforce that reflects the America in which it was made is its repeated message that the government cannot be trusted, especially for soldiers. This could be seen as another Reagan trope, but rather it seems to be remaining sensitivities from the Vietnam War. Megaforce, Guerrera, General Burnwhite, and Major Zara are all soldiers that prefer military life, and at some point in the film, they all express their distrust of the bureaucrats that control them. And it is, in fact, the collective of governments that betray Megaforce in the end and leaves them for dead. An idea that would show up again and again in 80s action films like Predator, First Blood Part 2, and Missing in Action. Perhaps the most off-note when it comes to Megaforce is the production design. That's really what people think of when it comes to this film. I mean, why is it so crazy? Well, there are a couple of clues. Firstly, Hal Needham wasn't known for his good taste, but the production design was in fact in the hands of Joel Schiller. He was in his 50s when production began, and he may not have been too hip with the times. Obviously, disco style plays an important role in the film. Disco wasn't completely dead by 1981 and 82, but it was definitely on its way out. There are some other odd stylistic influences thrown in there. In the late 70s and early 80s, there was an exercise craze that was gaining momentum, culminating in Jane Fonda's workout tape. But along with the trend came the fashion. One could draw a line from disco style to workout style. Big feathered hair and headbands along with tight spandex and bright colors. Ace Hunter sort of looks like one of the Bee Gees on his way to an aerobics class. In 1981, that would not have been outlandish. Another very big influence was the sci-fi revolution in movies that was kicked off by Star Wars in 1977. If you Google images from Buck Rogers, Flash Gordon, Tron, and Battlestar Galactica, you can see that Megaforce fits comfortably among them. Apparently spandex is the cool thing in the future. Clearly, Schiller was simply vibing off what was going on in American culture at the time. What was strange then, as it is now, was to then introduce these elements into an ultra-macho military war film. Obviously, these elements don't help each other out and end up having the opposite of the intended effect. Megaforce is neither futuristic nor hip, and the soldiers are not intimidating, but silly. I think you can see why I gave this film the grades I did. For the regular person picking up this film from the dollar bin, I give it an F. The intended audience might be a bit more forgiving of the film because explosions. But frankly, the action is kinda lame, and I give it a D+. Megaforce is a textbook example of plain old wrong filmmaking. It would have been super interesting to observe the film being made from its inception to its release, but here we are. Megaforce will forever be relegated to cult status as a so-bad-it's-good movie. But why does it achieve this award? Fundamentally because the filmmakers were being sincere in their attempt, and failed. They weren't trying to make a film that ranks in the worst films of all time category. The budget for Megaforce was $20 million. In 1981, that was in the high-end range. This is not the kind of money you spend on a farce. There's not really much in Megaforce that escapes the so-bad-it's-good label. The plot is ludicrous and not even communicated clearly. I had to watch the DVD twice with the subtitles on to even get the gist of what was happening in these fictional countries. The writing is amazingly ridiculous and falls into the so bad it's really bad category. The writer's attempts at comedy fall flat, especially with Dallas, who is supposed to be the funny one, as well as any of the stilted romance between Hunter and Zara. The directing is abysmal. The camera work is simplistic and uninteresting, the lighting and cinematography is about as flat and vanilla as they come, and the editing is boring. At least the film was exposed correctly. There are some notable attempts at special effects in the film. There is some pretty good miniature work, especially the exploding factory at the beginning of the film, and then later on in the Megaforce base. There is also some interesting work done with front projection, but frankly, given the state of special effects in the early 80s, and even in the late 70s, Megaforce is a letdown. Megaforce was supposed to be a stunt showcase, but mostly the stunts are just a motorcycle jump here and there. There are a lot of explosions, but they don't ring true, and certainly don't indicate any kind of danger. But they are still neato. The score for the film by Gerald and Mel is definitely 80s, very synth-tastic, but ultimately filled with cliched and slightly irritating motifs. Interestingly, the title song is kinda great. Played by 80s band 707, it's a rock and hair band number that fits in much better with how Needham was probably going for. It would be an awesome exercise to re-edit Megaforce with a disco soundtrack. The cast in this film were clearly in a difficult position. The actors were, for the most part, seasoned professionals. It's unclear if they were able to read a full script before signing up, or if they were offered a deal they couldn't pass on, but it's obvious that their only option was to lean into the camp of the film. And boy howdy, did they ever. Barry Bostwick and Michael Beck clearly understood that Megaforce was going to be more comedic than anything else. Persis Kambata seems to know that she's the straight man and gives a decent performance as the object of Hunter's sterling fancy. Edward Mulhare leans into a stereotypical comedic Englishman with a few absurdist touches here and there. The best performance as far as acting goes comes from Henry Silva, who effectively juggles the funny aspects of Guerrera, along with a mercenary darkness just under the surface. After all this, and even though I stand by the grades I've given it, Megaforce is actually kinda awesome. It is a film that really is so bad it's good. I think what I like best about Megaforce is that it's not cynical, ironic, or postmodern in any way. Megaforce is Megaforce. Hey movie cats, I'm just a puppet, but there are real cats out there that need your help, really. Please take some time to locate the cat shelter that is nearest to you and make a donation. And if you're in need of some love, as we all are, you can adopt a cat from that shelter and improve your life, as well as the lives of our feline friends. This week, Movie Cat is highlighting this shelter. Thanks so much for your help.